Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cannabis Accounting Podcast, um, brought to you by Dope CFO Certified Advisor. Today, I have with me my friend Leah Heise, founder of Gemini Twin Consulting, consultant to the cannabis industry, just as the title implies. Comes from a deep background outside of the cannabis industry. So, obviously, I like chatting with them. But before I kind of get into your background, Leah, if you want to just introduce yourself to the people who might not know you, just your kind of background and how you came to be in the cannabis industry.
Sure. Hi, thank you so much for having me on the this podcast. Raymond and I have known each other for a while, so it's fun to have a conversation with them kind of on air. Um, I have been in cannabis for 10 years. Before cannabis, I was a prosecutor for the federal government. I prosecuted people who killed, harmed, and harassed marine mammals and endangered species and violated commercial fisheries regulations. So I come from a very highly regulated industry, and also on the regulatory side, we produced regulations for the industry. In 2001, I got very sick with a disease called chronic pancreatitis, and I was told that I would not live 5 years. Um,
Jeez.
I went home to my then 18-month-old twins and lived on very high doses of opiate pain medication, and Xanax. I was in and out of the hospital more than 35 times, had major surgeries, chest tube sepsis, not great.
Okay.
In 2013, end of 2013, beginning of 2014, one of my doctors at Hopkins told me to try cannabis. And I was surprised, was not a cannabis consumer. And honestly, it changed my life. I am not on an opiate pain medication anymore. I have not been hospitalized with pancreatitis since 2016. So I believe in the power of the plant. Um, right about the time I started to feel better, Maryland passed its medical cannabis bill. And applications were pending, licenses were going to be awarded to applicants. So I decided to apply for a license in Maryland. I applied for a vertical, didn't win the vertical, but did win a dispensary. Started to build out that dispensary and ended up selling it to Forefront Ventures and then going inside of Forefront Ventures as their chief experience officer and chief compliance officer. I was there for 2 years and 2 months as we built out multiple states and raced to a public exit. And then after we exited, I went to Ascend Wellness Holdings as one of their earlier employees, and we scaled through COVID in 19 months to a public exit. And after the second public exit, I decided I wanted to step back and consult for a bit. And I've been consulting for 4 years on everything from, expanding your brand to a lot of HR and organizational design and in generalized structure, governance, good business practices, and things like that for the last 4 years.
Man, that is a really interesting career. And then I like the run with, two original companies going to an IPO because I come from public accounting and it's like I kind of just tier companies as like, well, you can't get any bigger than a pubco. Then you got like multinational conglomerates, even if they're privately held. Then you have like national companies that's privately held nationally. Then you have just like mom and pops. But pubcos are fun for many reasons. They're shitty for other reasons. But like, I just know how much goes into not only getting listed, but then maintaining that. It's at least on Wall Street, we have SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. There's just like a plethora of tests that we do in order to take the public's money, rightfully so. So I guess
Sure.
what was that process like going on with these IPO runs? Like, how did the companies think? How long did it take? Did they start the company with the grand vision to IPO? And then kind of like, what did their data room look like? Like, how difficult was it to get this cannabis company listed?
Sure. So Ascend was a different IPO than Forefront. Forefront was interesting because Forefront was one of the companies that was very early to IPO in the cannabis industry. We did it by RTO into a company called Cannex, but Chris Crane, who was the president at the time, had to go to DC and meet with like the Justice Department to get approval to actually do all of these things. So it was a very different process than Ascend. By the time Ascend came along, which was only 2 years later, I mean, cannabis goes so fast. The path was already set. I don't think that early on with Forefront we were necessarily intending to IPO, but we did. Ascend, yeah, we knew that that was the path. I mean, there was always a question of whether at one point potentially there could have been a sale. but they decided to IPO instead. And Abner was very rooted in that finance world, Wall Street, and very good and strategic at doing those things, and knew how to kind of lay the path to do it.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I'm like my initial question too is like, how do people decide? And again, like these are really high level thoughts, and I know it's not just one person, but like, why would they choose to IPO versus sell the company? It's like they build it up, they have the assets. Like you kind of have two different ways to liquidate it for the equity owners or just in general the decision makers. But like, what makes people go IPO versus just sell or exit the company?
So sometimes I think it's just what the CEO wanted, right? I knew that Abner, he wanted that under his belt. He wanted that to say that he had IPO'd the company. So he did, right? Like instead of going for a sale, he decided to IPO, and they've been successful. I think it's a good company. It's in one of the top 10 MSOs, and it's doing well.
Nice, nice. Um, Kind of yeah, thinking through, obviously you had your time as an attorney, a lawyer. How did your time as an attorney and lawyer help you as a consultant now later on in your career, if we were to just kind of bridge the gap from early career to current career?
I think being an attorney really helps me look at companies a little bit differently, especially in terms of governance and good practices. It and the legal, almost like the law school, really helped with the way that I think. I think very logically, and I do a ton of research. I'm constantly questioning what I see. Is it a no, even if it's a number, right? Like, where did that number come from? Why is that number here? Really taught me to dig deep, I think, versus staying kind of super surface level. I think that's one of the biggest things. And it taught me how to like navigate in a very regulated market.
That makes sense. Dig deep, like do your research, understand how to like question things. I guess like yeah, lawyers are inherently questioning things, and then yeah, dealing in a regulatory market. Because I think of cannabis, it's like other. It's not the only market that is highly regulated, capital intensive, and growing. You know, like there's other companies and industries like that. So then kind of stepping into that consultant role, you know, a dope CFO, we kind of get compared usually to a fractional CFO, a financial consultant. Obviously, we use the term certified advisor. And we gave it some thought, you know, a few years ago, where it's like, all right, why do consultants, yeah, candidly, like why does the term get kind of a bad rap in the cannabis industry and then just consultants in general? Like, cause I remember even on outside of the cannabis industry at my last company, like people would roll their eyes like, oh, great, the consultants are here again. They're going to ask a bunch of questions. We're going to go through the 5 why analysis to figure out why we're not collecting our cash on our sales. And it's stuff that like internal audit's been saying for years with the data, but we got to pay an external party to tell us this before the actual higher ups will listen. Because God forbid they listen to the people they've been working with and paying for years. But that
Sure.
was my like my younger self interpretation. Now that I'm kind of a consultant myself, I get it. But like from your perspective, why do they get a bad rap?
Sure. I mean, I think it's part of that, right? And I also think, I mean, I think there's a number of reasons. Even
Hey, we
McKinsey and
got time.
BCG, even like McKinsey and BCG, like those big consulting
That's who
companies
we
are
would deal with. Yeah.
having, yeah, they're having problems right now. They're because, people don't think that they're necessary or they're not doing the thing. And I think it comes down to a couple of things. I think one, to what you said, right? Like employees are feeling like, wow, why aren't they listening to me? Why do they need to someone come in and double check my stuff, right? But also, I think there's a number of things. One, I don't think companies think through what they really need. And oftentimes, when they tell you what they need, that really isn't what they need. I like to do a needs assessment when I go in and kind of go back and tell them, like, here's the 4 areas I think that you need to focus on, whether it's wholesale, HR, whatever it may be. But a lot of companies will then just come back to you and say, no, I know what I need. I'm just going to tell you. And it's like, okay, I have never been in a consulting situation yet where they actually know what they need. Like there's always a much more
Yeah.
other things, right? And then I think the other thing, besides the fact that they don't know what they need, so then the scope of work gets all wonky. I think the other thing that's an issue is we make work, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't operate in a vacuum, and I need full access to the systems. I don't, or a person who is going to be working side by side with me to give me access to the system so I can get the data I need to make the plan that they need. And if you're just hiring me to do a plan, which is fine, who's implementing that plan? Because a lot of times you just hand over this plan to a company and then what, they stick it in a binder on the shelf because they don't have anyone to implement and they haven't hired you, the consultant, to then be the implementing partner. Um, so I think it's a lot of those things. I think really be sure of what you want out of a consulting relationship. And there's ways as a consultant to help guide that, but I feel like there's a lot of pushback from time to time on companies. And then what happens is the companies get frustrated, feel like they spent a lot of money for something that they didn't get, right?
Right, right. It's like they didn't know what they like. If they knew what the solution was, they wouldn't have hired you. They would have just spent the resources like getting towards closer to the solution that they need. And it's like once they bring us in, then they're like, yeah, like this is how we fix this, which is also going to take time and resources, usually in the resources in mindset and capital. And then they're like, I just paid you. Now I gotta like do more effort and spend more resources to solve it. But I get it. It's like, well, you didn't even know what the answer was. And I couldn't just give you the answer from talking with you for 5 minutes at an expo. I got to like dig into your stuff, actually do my job, which could take weeks, months. Now we know what
Sure.
the actual issues are. And once we know what the issues are, we know what the solutions are for the issues. But to your point, it's like, could be this issue because there's always a number of issues with a company regardless, like even if they're profitable and scaling, like there's always issues that need to be solved. And I don't even like the term problem or issues because they have negative connotations. It's like if there's things that we're building and solving, that's a good thing. That means we're growing. It's like once we stop solving new problems, that means we're going stagnant, and the next step after stagnant is decline. And so it's like, no, 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 we want to be in this trying to think the whole time, which I think that's kind of the balancing act is like, and I'm guilty of it too, is like thinking business gets to a point of plateau and profitability and we all just kind of shake hands like we made it. It's like, no. Then you just see
No,
the next level and you're like, oh shit, like we just built all these systems, we're good. And now I got to like kind of do it again to get to this other area.
I
So,
feel like it's iterative, right? Like business is iterative.
yes.
It should constantly be moving. I'll give you an example of one of the, like, so there was a client that wanted us to fix wholesale. The sales team stinks. They don't know what they're doing. Sales team stinks. So, we went in and was like, okay, well, we need to change their incentive model, the way that they're incentivized. But that just wasn't the only problem, right? Like, so you change the way those salespeople are incentivized, but the company doesn't know what their gross margins are on a SKU by SKU basis, and they're not tracking it on a SKU by SKU basis or capable of giving the salespeople those margin numbers like on a weekly basis or at the bottom, at least a monthly basis, right? So that they can have the freedom to make the sales. They need to know that they're going to make the commission that they want to live on. And then in addition to that, they have no real marketing. Their assets to sell these products is awful, but it was all like the salespeople problem. And I think that's endemic in so many companies. It's no one person is ever going to save your company, nor is one person ever going to tank your company. It's a cascading effect of poor decisions, lack of decision trees, and just bad structure.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And I think that's like, I it's just the nature of consultants. We kind of come in and kind of like we never get brought in when things are good. We only
Oh
get brought in when
no.
they know there's usually an issue. Like, and everybody says they're like, no, I'm going to bring in the right team at the right time. And I'm like, at least for accounting, tax strategy, and financial reporting, my experience is no. The vast majority of people do not bring us in at the right time. They wait till their investors want a K1 from 2024 taxes, and they're like, wait, I can't just file them. I need financial statements. It's like you should be looking at this every 4 weeks. And to your point, the good ones are actually looking at it every week to where they
Mm-hmm.
like actively know what their profit margins are. And so, but again, like that's why we get a little bit like people call consultants like armchair quarterbacks because you did like bring in the key question of like who implements it. Like once we actually got to the root problem, we've asked the 5 whys McKinsey taught us. We know the solutions because we're a credentialed expert with years of experience. We still need to take the time to fix it. And I feel like this is a prime example. So with like the sales team or the managers of the sales team and the owners and founders, who is going to implement the whole big picture? Like once you tell them, you're like, no, it wasn't just Jim not knowing the sales script. It's actually this whole litany of things of like they need to be trained up a little bit. They don't really know what SKUs have the highest profit margin. So top line sales is one number, but profit margin is actually the more important number, or just profit in general. So I guess like, who do you think should implement it, or how does that combination work of consultant, operations, finance and ownership,
So
what
I
do
see it like as I kind of bucket the consultants, right? Like, and
you,
the consultants, and then the way that we do things. So there's like the project-based work where you're hired to do whatever, build a plan or, execute a performance plan, whatever it may be. And that to me is like finite in time. And
okay.
you complete the project end to end, you have results, you report your results, that's it. Then you have an advisor, like I do advisory type stuff too, where you're just a brain that somebody uses on a regular basis, and it's retained, and there's no like real hours, but they call you when they need you or they want you to do things. And then there's that fractional role like you guys do, where I see fractional to be more of that implementer, where you can walk hand in hand with a controller, with an accountant, inside of the company, with the CFO to help them execute stuff they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do, and even to train someone internally to eventually step into your shoes, right? Like that was what I would like from a fractional role, would be to go in, teach someone how to think this way, how to implement the plans, and then they're in charge. Like I don't want to be, as a fractional, I don't want to be in charge of it forever. But that's kind of how I
Yeah.
see the consulting, advising, fractional world, and they kind of overlap. And some projects you're doing both, and some you're doing one. It just depends.
No, I appreciate that. That's why I love these podcasts. I always learn just ways of thinking. Cause yeah, it's like to me, like consultants was just like a big amorphous term and we did different things, but like we definitely structure it kind of that way too, where it's like we've seen one-offs where it's like this is all I need you to do is clean up the books and file the tax. Like, all right, that's a project. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
a big lift, but we can get it done, and it'll take 90 days. Then ongoing advisory, like we don't ever do that. Hopefully, I get old and gray haired and I can become an advisor where they just call me for my brain and experience every once in a while, keep me on retainer. But yeah, the fractional thing is that's what it is because it's again, there's always an issue, and that's what I guess like that's where I'm a CPA, so I can pick on CPAs, but like that's where we were terrible as CPAs. Like we'd always come in and be like, this is wrong, that's wrong, change this, this is how we're gonna do the taxes, and then either just do it ourselves or just leave them to make a mistake for another 12 months, then we'll come back, fix it, leave them again, let their mistakes. And that's why I like was pumped about Dope CFO. I'm like, dude, CPAs are lame. Like we do taxes and assurance work. Like I want to be an actual financial controller managing the P&L, like driving profits. Cause like I came from business ownership. I'm like, no, it's way better to spend money and make money than to just come in and tell somebody how they should do it. It's like, no,
Sure.
be the actual driver. But
And
then at some
sometimes,
point,
like, even if we know what we think the process should be, it's all dependent upon the humans there, the culture they have. My way may not be the right way. I can inform and recommend that you do things a certain way as a consultant. But I try not to be the one doing the thing, right? Like I want to have a partner inside that I'm building to do the thing.
because yeah, it's like if you don't have a seat at the table or somebody inside also kind of leading it, then you are like the outside person. But thinking of the human aspects, I'm glad you brought up the human side of it because I'm super guilty of just looking at businesses as balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement, maybe a budget to actual if they're to that point. But like every business to me is just financial statements, and then humans make the financial statements. But now that I'm a business owner, I'm like, no, no, no. Humans still run businesses, no matter how big their team is, whether it's 10, 100, 1,000, they're still humans. So kind of thinking through like early day founders, investors versus current day founders, investors, like how's the human side of the industry changed?
Oh, I mean, early on,
It's not a loaded question. It's just, yeah, just asking.
well, early on, we had so much money being thrown at us, so much. And investors were, this was the green rush, and everybody was going to make gazillions of dollars, and there really was very limited due diligence going on to a lot of this stuff. It was just like, yeah, I want to be in New Mexico, so I'm just going to buy whatever company's still okay, and not like digging deep into any of their P&L, like really not doing done a due diligence. So I think those early investors are very different than today investors. I mean, we're not seeing equity come in anyways, but
Yeah.
it is rigorous. It is far more rigorous And even when you go through this extensive review of your financials and your, go forward and your use of funds and all of the things, you're still unlikely to get the debt. So, so different, so different. On the founder side, early on, it was definitely people that were not necessarily business people, but people were very passionate about the plant, very
Mhm.
passionate, really wanted to make a difference in humanity with the plant. Very admirable, but the lack of surrounding themselves with business people really wasn't great, and wasn't good to the end result of the company. And now I think we're starting to see more business people and maybe even more business people partnering with some of that passion,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but
No, I
much
would
more of a
agree.
business focus, I feel like.
No, for sure. And I appreciate your very political, like intelligent way to explain it. I would just call it like legacy to legit. It's like, I don't know, early days, like investors were either like super gung-ho, pretty risk, they were like wildcatters, like people who would invest in like speculative oil, and then legacy operators that had success. It's like, well, they
Yeah.
had success, they're able to turn cash into real estate into like a legitimate business, however they wash their money. But now they're coming back and like those days are wildly different. I kind of think of it as West Coast, East Coast, because like my first kind of like I had friends growing in Michigan, then we went out to Colorado around 2015, Oregon around 2018. There was always money to set up a garden. It was like not that big of a deal. But then it's like east of the Mississippi, get into Illinois, like these new markets. It's like, oh, I owned a successful construction company for 20 years and I applied for a license, or I was an attorney for the government, and now I
Yeah.
applied for this like new business because I have my reasons. And it's and some parts it's wildly refreshing. People totally like understand, like, yeah, I know I need to pay taxes. I don't need to get too crazy, just make sure they're done. So I don't know, it's definitely changing, but we're still very early on. And so I think that's kind of an interesting thing too. Of like we look back 10 years, like we're almost to the finish line, and it's like, no, dude, there's still
Oh,
so many decades to go.
we're not even a mature industry yet. I mean, we're not even have any federal relief on any aspect anywhere yet. So I think we have years and years to grow and mature and figure out how to really grow this with, decent margins, and we got to live where we are.
Gotta live where we are. And that's just that is the truth. And thinking of like kind of scaling, because and I kind of thought of this question just because like I come from, yeah, like larger companies where it's like, well, yeah, scaling is the name of the game. Like if we're a publicly traded company, like by law, we need to return capital to our investors. So by law, we need to be growing either top line or profit margin every every year, every quarter. And so like I just came from a world where it was very okay to say we're trying to be a big business and grow a big business. And then I got into cannabis where it was like, whoa, let's not say we're trying to scale too quick, too fast. Like let's not admit we want to actually go public. Let's not admit we want to become an MSO. So I guess like I'm like more of like an emotional thing. Like, why do you think some companies, founders and investors admit that they're trying to scale, whereas like some in this, industry like kind of think of it negatively?
I think it depends on the mindset, right? Like I know
Yeah, of
for
course.
like Ascend, for example, which is very business focused company, they never had a problem saying that they were going to scale and be an MSO because they were coming from it from that mainstream business perspective. And I think for smaller operators who, it's their first license in a state and they're really committed to being focused on their state and building and growing in their state, that word MSO or that word scale is it just makes them feel sick to their stomach, like they don't want to be this big thing. I come from MSO land, so I'm so used to more of that MSO, very business focused mentality. I think we certainly need small business, and I'm a big support. I am a small business, right? You are a small business,
Yeah, yeah.
and I do think we need them. We'll see how it shakes out. I'm predicting lots of consolidation.
Same. No, because it is interesting. And it's even outside of cannabis. Like my old man runs a metal finishing shop. They do anywhere between 3 to 5 mil and, good year versus bad year, 40% profit margins. And he's just like, he wants to stay small though. And the dude doesn't even have a website. It's just like people know that that's who you call if you want to get your, industrial chrome finished. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, dude, it almost takes just as much effort to stay at this size than to just turn on the website and grow the company because it's like the market is wants your product. So I don't know, I was kind of asking that for selfish reasons, but for sure it's in the cannabis industry as well. I think some of it is like just the culture, it's
I
like it
do
is a
think it's the
plant.
culture. Like my husband we have a small law firm and he's never wanted to be big. He always wants to be that kind of street lawyer that's taking care of your real estate stuff. Like, um, it's a mindset, I think. It's just a mindset.
No, for sure, for sure. And then thinking through, yeah, kind of like the change of scale, like I think that's a good segue into the just the global cannabis market. I know we've crossed paths in Barcelona and Berlin, and it's in the United States, we live in a bubble, and it's like obviously without any interstate intercommerce for the most part, most people in the state live within a bubble, and then in the United States, like we don't even no import or export, so we live within a bubble. But like anybody who's like gotten to Canada or gotten to Europe and has seen like, oh, global cannabis is a thing. And I came from global business. So it's like to me, I like it. Like I thought it was very cool to go down to Mexico City. We had an accounting team there. I'd go to Bratislava, Slovakia. We had an accounting team there. We do audits all over the world. And international supply chains are cool because there is like
Hmm.
opportunity of like, oh, if I buy this, raw material here, combine it with this labor in this country, I can sell it to this country. you know, that's how business is done at like a global level. But I think people don't think cannabis is that way. And it's like, oh no, it is very much that way.
It
It's just like
absolutely is.
early stages. So I guess just thinking about, and I framed the question from like, obviously Canada and the United States, like we have the largest markets and the most experience. And so we're, naturally trying to go over to EU, UK. It's kind of like just an extension of a new market to us. It's like people from California figured out Michigan, then they figured out New York. Now we're trying to figure out UK and Europe. And obviously their adult use, they're much more medical over there, but they are starting to get adult use. So I guess just at a high level, just kind of how do you think through the global markets and kind of like what could we learn from each other?
Sure. I mean, I love the global markets, and and I do think at some point we'll have a global supply chain.
Of
It makes
course.
sense, right? Like, honestly, California could probably supply the entire world with the amount of cannabis they're growing, but there's other places in the world that, um, grow great quality product, like Rwanda with tea leaves, right? Like they are going to build a medical cannabis export business. So what does that look like in South Africa, right? Like they grow amazing wine. What does the ability to do that translate into the cannabis plant? And then certainly other places that are known for cannabis, right? Like Morocco and Thailand, just they can grow for far cheaper than we can in the United States because of the labor costs. And I don't know
Yeah, land
why,
costs.
right? I don't know why it wouldn't follow anything else. I think there's so much that those markets can learn from the US in terms of the mistakes we made and how we built things, how we structured things, the state by state vertical markets. I think um, there's a lot of things they can avoid. I mean, even metric, for example, right? I love the idea of seed to sale tracking because I'm a compliance girl, but you can manipulate it and
Of course.
you can get you can get illicit product into your own grow and then push it back out into the market for better price compression. You can divert product. So I think that it needs to be tightened up. And they need to get rid of those stupid plastic tags because that's just a
Yeah.
waste for the environment. But I mean, there's so many things we can learn. And then from what we can learn from Europe, I think, especially as we go into this Schedule 3 potentiality, and what does
Okay.
that look like? Will we have to be registering products and things like that? They're already doing that in Europe, and they're
Yeah.
already at EU GMP compliance in terms of their cannabis, and so should we. We should be offering the same sense of security and comfort to the end consumer as those European products are. And yes, it's expensive, and I'd love to figure out a way to do it cheaper, but that's something I think that we could bring over to the United States, and we'll have to if we ever get to a export
Mm,
ability.
I mean, we love capitalism in the United States. It's like if
Mm-hmm.
anybody can figure out global business, like where it's like, oh, sign me up. Like I want to be the one to do it. Because thinking of that, it's because that is the thing. Like with Curaleaf over there and a few other ones, like there's already large companies. Like maybe, of course, we're federally illegal, so to IPO, we got to go to Canada. But they're American companies, like pretty much through and through. And so I guess like whether it's Canadians or American companies that are looking to sell products into EU, UK, like how do they go about vetting their partners? Because like that's the hustle. It's like, yeah, we need capital, but we always need a local person for the real estate and the license. It's just, and it's what we've learned in Canada and the United States. It's like you can have a big bag of money, and of course that will help and it will get you a seat at the table, but you still need a license to do it legally, and you usually need real estate to park the license and hire the people so they can go to work. So I guess how do they go about vetting their partners? Because I have like a few case studies where it's like they've just lost their ass on assets, whether it's Colombia or in Europe, where it's like, damn, that was not supposed to happen. So I guess how do these Americans and Canadians with candidly much larger cannabis companies, much larger treasuries, how do they partner and vet their partners to be successful in these new markets?
I mean, I think you gotta, I mean, it's no different to me than doing it on a state by state basis, right? Like if you're
Same.
going from one
Yeah.
state to another, you're not gonna know.
We
I mean,
can't say that, Leah. Everybody gets upset if we say that as Americans. That it's like I've already done this multiple times. Like, no, 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 it's totally different.
I
It's like
mean,
I don't
yes,
think it's
the
that
framework
different.
of the regs may be different, like, and certain aspects of the regs would be different, but conceptually, it's really not that different.
It's identical
It
conceptually. Of
is. And you've got to have people, I really believe you got to have people on the ground.
course, yeah.
Just like you're not going to go into the state of Georgia and build a grow unless you have somebody that's from Georgia on the ground who has good connections with the politicians, that understands the zoning laws, that can maybe has some real estate connections. It's all about networking and relationships and connectivity. And I think this industry is uniquely formed on connectivity, networking, relationships.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it is. It's because it's so small. It's tiny. Like people don't realize how small it is. They're like, oh, the cannabis industry is small because it's new. I'm like, no, dude, it is tiny. Like, and if you like go from like American, like a few events and expos, you start to see the same people. It's tinier in Europe. It's like a tenth of
Oh,
the size, where it's you go like 1 year, you kind of know everybody. By your second year, you're like, all right, I know everybody. By your third year, you're like, all right, if you need to talk to anybody in Europe, UK, just let me know. I could probably introduce you to the person who can introduce you to the person within like the law of 6 degrees. So no, it's very relationship based, this industry. And obviously in the States, like we have this like legacy era. So like of course everybody was, it was only who you knew. And like you had to
sure.
talk to him in person. Like you could hardly even get him on a cell call, let alone emails. And so that still kind of carries over. I can nerd out on that all day. We'll table that for a second. Just thinking through, because I have some questions on founders and investors. And I know that you've like dealt with both of them. So I guess high level, because my one question I want to get into is like how you go back to the well. But before then, like there's always the founder of these cannabis companies. I've seen it already where it's like they did great, they're good people, but to your point, they may not have had just like that really, traditional business background. And so I guess like how do founders transition out of the companies they've built, given that it's their baby, they love it, but maybe like their investors, the other C-suite, the other decision makers kind of know, hey, he might not be the one for the job to get us to the next level. And at this point, it's not just us. We have employees, they have spouses, they have kids. Now we have more responsibilities. So it's not like a personal thing, it's just a business thing. So I guess, how do you kind of have those conversations and how do they play out in the background?
I mean, those conversations are hard, right? Because you don't want the founder to feel like they failed, but there is a point in everyone's career where you're going to get over your skis. You're not going to know as much. And I think at that point, the investors, the board, other C-suite members, they have a decision to make on their side of, do we invest in the founder to make the founder more what we need for the future of the company? Or do we push the founder to the board or out? Right. And I think for the founder, I get it, it's your baby, you're raising your baby, but when are you going to let your baby move out of the house? Right. Like
Yeah.
at some point, you have to let your kids, because I have 26-year-olds, have their own lives. Like it's not up to you what their decisions are. It's not up to you who they marry. I'm lucky I have great son-in-laws, but it's not your decision. It's not your decision about where they live. Like you might not like the apartment, but they do. So similar to the founder needs to decide for themselves, are they ready? And sometimes it's a straight ego play. Like they need to kind of get over their ego. They will always be the founder,
Yeah,
What do
there's only
you,
one founder. You can have CEOs, you can have presidents change, but there's always just going to be the one founder or the first
right,
founder.
right. So do you want to be the founder of a failed company, or do you want to be the founder of a company that goes on to, be the biggest thing in cannabis? And that's a hard decision, and it is very difficult to get founders there. Um, but it's a necessary journey.
Nice, nice. And I just had to ask because like I didn't really experience founders until I got into the cannabis industry. Because like all the companies I served, that is second generation, third generation, publicly traded. It's like founder's been dead for decades. Like, and so is his kid. This is owned by it's just a business at this point, which is kind of like it's great for the employees because it's like it's stable. They don't have to worry about one guy going off the rails. He gets a divorce, midlife crisis, wants to change the company. It's like, no, like that guy's gone.
Sure. And that is another way to think about it. Like when you talk about second generation, another way to, to work on that conversation is the succession planning idea. Like every
Yeah.
company should have a
Oh man.
succession plan. I mean, even a husband and wife should have a succession. I mean, it's like estate planning, right? Like
Mhm.
what's your plan if one of you is no longer capable of performing the functions that they're currently performing? So sometimes you can ease into that conversation with a founder by starting to do some succession planning. Who are you growing below you? Is it someone in your family? Is it your COO, the president? Like, who is it that you're kind of career pathing into a point where you will feel more comfortable to meet the needs that you have? And, if you can ground a founder in what do they want 5 years from now?
Yeah, what are
And
your goals?
yeah, what are your goals? Like, is it to be retired in 5 years and sitting on the board? Is it to be traveling the world on your private jet? Like, whatever it may be. So then how do we get you from point A to point B within the time frame that you want, while still allowing this company to grow in a way that will support your future needs?
Yeah. Right. Because it's like, I know, and I always come back to resources. It's like, if you just let us know what you want, you could probably get your business to go there. It'll take years, but without your hands. And then you can kind of just, yeah, step into the board. I like traveling. I already live in Mexico part of the year. I try to pull my retirement into my 30s as much as I can. So I'm like, you could be doing what I'm doing. Like, why do you want to work all hours of the day? Part of me is just thinking about my old man. Like, he just wants to work till he's 75. And I'm like, dude, you don't need to do that.
Some people are like that. My husband's like
Yeah,
that. Our
for
financial
sure.
planner the other day said, when do you want to retire? And he was like,
When I die.
never, never, exactly, never. And I'm like, okay.
Well, I guess that's good. You love what you do. You never work a day in your life. Another, just a little bit more of a more tactical question because I'm going through it right now with client we got brought into. And because again, some of these cannabis companies, Leah, obviously you've been serving them for years. Like, of course, we talk a lot about the startups and we did in this podcast, but there's many established cannabis companies that are
Sure.
5+ years old. To your point, just between me and you, they're still babies. It's like you're gonna be a startup for like 10 years. It's like even if you go publicly traded in Canada, like you're still very much do not have the processes of a real established company in a real publicly traded environment. So we're dealing with a lot of established companies that have to go back to the well, frankly. Like we get brought in, we do a quick cash flow analysis. It's like, hey, based on everything, based on what you're doing, this is how much comes in on average, this is how much goes out, this is your profit margin, this see how it's going down. It's going to go negative. We're going to go out of business in this amount of time. So we got to
Yeah,
make a change. And changes usually come with a cost. And so I guess just kind of first, how have you seen founders upset investors or break the trust of investors? And I know the answer to that. It's like, well, don't close your books every month and just go silent on them. But how have you seen
sure.
it? And then how do you explain to founders who may have to go back to the well? Because we're seeing a lot of that in cannabis right now.
I mean, I think having the financial conversation of going back to the well is a little bit easier, right? Because you're dead if you don't.
Yeah, and then the investment goes to zero. So I guess just but before then, like how do they maintain investor trust? And if they do break it, how do they get it back if at
I
all?
think, to me, maintaining trust with anything and anyone is being transparent, making sure you're doing what you said you were going to do. Don't overpromise and underdeliver. Don't not give them K1s. I mean, do the minimal basic governance requirements. Make sure you're doing that. Because if you have and you're transparent and you're talking to your investors and you're not like manipulating the books and adjusting everything on your P&L to make it look like something happened that didn't happen so that you can explain away a loss. I think you're going to have a better relationship. At the end of the day, this is a relationship. Like if this was your spouse,
Yeah.
How honest would you be? Right? Are you going to hide everything from them and wait till you declare bankruptcy and then be like, oh, sorry, I declared bankruptcy and
Ran out of cash. Sorry,
right,
didn't
we
want to
ran out.
disappoint
I
you.
was just gonna not gonna tell you and let you know. Like it's at the end of the day, business is still it's relationships. It's honesty. You build trust by communicating and being authentic and transparent.
No, I appreciate that. I wish it was some more of a secret sauce, but it's like, no, just even the good and the bad, especially the bad, tell them quick because it doesn't get better with age. In fact, it gets way worse because you'll hear that, like, why didn't you tell me this last week or last month? It's like,
Sure.
I was just waiting for the, our standard meeting there, board of director investors. And it's like, no, just tell them if we didn't hit our numbers. So that when we have the meeting, they at least have like the numbers, which again, like, that's why we're so big
Well,
on
and
financial reporting.
tell them like why you didn't miss your numbers. And if you want to really build trust, tell them the plan to fix it, right? Like
Yeah.
when I do compliance work, it's all about even if I'm reporting to a regulatory body, I am never going to go to them and say, we screwed up and here's, why we didn't do whatever. I'm going to go to them and say, hey, we screwed up. We conducted a root cause analysis. These are our new SOPs to fix it, and this will never happen again.
Yep, yep. It's kind of like an IRS abatement letter. It's like you can't just tell them, we didn't pay you. It happens. It's like, no, 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 we didn't pay you because of XYZ. We're going to give you this much upfront. Can agree to this payment plan. You have a much higher likelihood of them giving you forgiveness and allowing to like what your suggested terms than if you just say like, nah, we just didn't pay it. We didn't have the money. Just let us know what we owe you and let the IRS deal with it. It's like, no, no, no. Come with why you miss, admit it, and then have the solution, which I guess like that's kind of that's where the rub is.
Sure.
All right, so being mindful of our last 3 minutes here, just I always try to end on like a fairly positive tune. This cannabis, there's always tough times in it, but I guess looking to the future, can't believe 20, MJ BizCon is in like a week,
I know.
2025 is over already. The holidays after that. So look into 2026, Leah. What has you a little bit of concern for 2026, but more importantly, what are you excited about for 2026?
Certainly, the debt wall has me concerned for 2026.
Yeah.
My hope is we get rescheduling. Everyone call your congress people, call your senator, ask them to call the White House and demand rescheduling if they're pro rescheduling. That was from Kim Rivers, and I agree. I know we all want descheduling, but can we get some lift? And
Yeah.
rescheduling is the path I see on the table right now, and there isn't really another one. So let's take what we can get and move it forward. Rescheduling is what I'm super hopeful for.
No, I agree. I'm much more of a realist. Even I'm always very positive, but I don't want to be so positive. People think I'm naive. It's like, but I'm like, progress isn't meant to be perfect. I still live in a legacy state, so it's like there's tons of people still operating like without licenses, and so it's like I'm just happy that like we're getting states around us that medical and adult use. But no, so I hear you, and just so everybody who's listening, the debt wall. A lot of companies took on a lot of debt. A lot of it's coming due. So there's going to be restructuring, refinancing, reorganizations, consolidations, which good for some, not good for others. But and then I agree with you. Like, yes, of course, descheduling would be the perfect win. But at this point, like, I'll just take rescheduling because even like the diverting product in and out, it's like people just wanted licenses, so we just knew we could at least do this thing. And so
Yeah,
it's like even rescheduling just gets more people access to it, but nothing's perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, Leah. This was a pleasure. I'll have your, website and email in the show notes. I guess just currently tell people what you're up to. Are you looking for business? Where are you going for the next few weeks? And we'll wrap it up.
sure. Let's see, next few weeks I will be at MJ Biz. I am speaking on a very scintillating topic at the HR Summit for Flower Hire, which is on metrics and how you can partner with CFOs to be more strategic as an HR professional. So you are used as a lever instead of a cost center. So yes, very exciting things. So I'll be there, always looking to help and support, mentor guide companies. It's exciting.
Yeah, I could vouch for that. You've helped me a few times in some cab rides, just think through some things. So no, appreciate your candidness and willingness to help because we're still a startup industry, and I think we're all like, yeah, we know some stuff 10 years into it, but it's always changing. And I always say it's like more we can work together, probably be more successful and have a little bit more fun along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All righty, talk to you later. Be well, Leah. Bye
Bye,
bye.
Raymond.